All right, welcome everybody to Wooden Cutting Boards Design. We're going to start with the design aspect of our wood cutting boards paperwork. So here on the front page, there's a few options, but for our first project, we're going to start with a strip laminated cutting board like you see in the first picture here. Things like this, end grain cutting boards or converging patterns, difficult patterns in geometry are more advanced, and I would avoid that for your first project. So we're going to start with strip laminated cutting boards because it's going to run us through the remainder of the machines that we did not see in grade 8. So we'll be using the jointer, the planer, and the table saw and the router table for this project. So the first part in your design, you need to create 4 sketches with some dimensions and some materials that you might like to use. So working on your material identification and selection when you are doing your design is very important. It'll get you familiar with different types of wood and their characteristics, their grain patterns, and how one material contrasts with another, so we can get some nice interesting patterns and features within our project. You'll be asked to write what you like about each design, about design 1, and what you don't like about each design. So this is going to help you to refine your ideas and decide what features you like most and what features you don't like about your own sketches and your own creations. It's a form of self-reflection, and it's important for us to engage in that in the design process so that we can create the most effective and quality product as possible. So here in design 4, I chose black walnut and ash because I quite like the grain pattern that's in ash. And black walnut contrasts really, really well with ash. And also I like that all of these pieces are the same size except for the middle one. It's going to create some nice symmetry and still have a nice amount of visual interest with contrast and something to sort of set the piece of wood apart by having a thin piece in the middle. Just gives it a little bit of flair. But we always want to think about the structural stability of our cutting board as well. We can't just make a cutting board out of one piece of wood because it would tend to cup and bow and twist on us and try and pull itself apart, because cutting boards always are subject to moisture when we cut vegetables and whatever on it, and when we wash the cutting board, and so it's getting wet and then it dries out, it gets wet and it dries out, and that tends to it'll move and then it'll dry out and move again, and it'll move and it'll dry out and it'll move again, and it'll tend to crack and try and fall apart. So the thinner pieces of wood we have and the more of them that we have, the more stable our cutting board is going to be and the longer it's going to last, because each individual piece is going to keep its neighboring piece in check. So this one wants to move a little bit, and so does this one, and so does this one, but they're all trying to move slightly differently, and so together they're going to keep each other from moving too much and pulling themselves apart. Another thing I like about this is it's a good size, so 17 by 10 inches, so that's pretty good. One thing I don't like about this design is that it is a little bit simple, but for a first project, I think it's great. So then if you flip the page and you've answered all those questions about what you like and don't like about each of your 4 designs, you're going to reiterate your design and refine it into a more finished design. So you're going to use a ruler this time, and you're going to try and work on a little bit of scale, and I've changed the dimensions a little bit. So I made it 16 by 10.5 because these are each going to be 1-inch pieces, and I have 5 on each side and then a 1/2 inch piece in the middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches and a half, 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 9.5, 10.5. Okay? After that, you're going to create a half-scale drawing on a piece of grid paper. So you should be able to fit your cutting board on one sheet of grid paper, because we generally don't want to make cutting boards that are too large. So a half scale is usually a good scale. That means 1 on your drawing is 2 in real life. So this is 1/4 inch grid. So this is 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch wide pieces. So that means in real life, 1/2 inch would be 1 inch. So this would be 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 5 inch, 5.5. This one's only a 1/4. 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 9.5, 10.5. Okay? So next thing we want to do is we want to differentiate our different pieces of wood. So these ones, the light ones are all going to be ash, and the dark ones are all going to be black walnut. So here I'm just going to put an A for ash, an A for ash, A for ash, just so I know that these are all going to be ash. And we have some black walnut pieces, and those are going to be B. So I'm just going to label them B. B. But this one's a different size. So if I called this B, when I went to do my cut list, I wouldn't just have 3 pieces the same size, so I need to differentiate these. This is still going to be B, but we'll call this B1. And that's a B1 because these are both 1 inch. And this will be B2. And there's only one of those. So after you've done this, you're going to create a cut list. So you're going to fill out your project, write the date, and then we're going to say part name. Our part name, we're just going to say part A. Our material is going to be ash. Our length is going to be 1 extra inch. So we're going to rough cut these 1 inch longer so that we can go through the process of refining them using the stock breakout process. So through the jointer, through the planer, through the table saw, and then glue up. And once everything is glued up and planed flat again, then we would cut everything to our finished dimension. So we always want to start with a rough length, adding an inch. So my rough length is going to be 17 inches because my finished length is 16. My width for each piece of A is 1 inch. So this can be my finished dimension because I don't need to add anything for width because I want to glue all these pieces together and have them be an exact width when I'm done. But our length, we always want to add an inch. Okay, my thickness, all of our cutting boards are always going to start at 1 inch thick. And number of parts for A. So how many of these do I need? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. Okay, so I know that I need to cut 8 pieces, 1 inch wide, 17 inches long. Okay, so now let's go with B. So B1, black walnut. These pieces are also going to be 17 inches long because they're going to be 1 inch longer than my finished product in the end. These are also going to be 1 inch wide, 1 inch thick. So we're talking rough dimensions here, not our finished dimensions necessarily. And I'm going to have 2. My pencil's dying. There we go. All right, so that's these 2 done. Now I need B2. That's the same, black walnut. It's also going to be 17 inches, but it's only going to be 1/2 inch wide and 1 inch thick, and there's going to be 1 piece. So the next part we need to do is calculate our board foot measurements to figure out how much material we're actually going to be using. We use our rough numbers for this, so 17 inches length. Our total width, so our total width of our cutting board is 10.5, and thickness of the rough material is 1 inch. So we use our formula, length in inches times width in inches times thickness in inches for our total project, divided by 144. So where that number comes from, one board foot is 12 inches by 12 inches by 1 inch thick. So 12 times 12 is 144. One inch thick would be 144 cubic inches. So 1 cubic inch would be 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch. So 144 of those is equal to 1 board foot. So what we're doing with this formula is we're calculating cubic inches into a cubic board foot measurement. Here is where we're going to fill out our formula for our actual cutting board. So our total length of our finished cutting board, if it's a finished rectangle, is 17 inches. Our finished width is 10.5 inches, 10.5, and our thickness is 1. Okay, so our formula, we're going to say length times width times thickness divided by 144. So we're going to put 17 times 10.5 times 1 divided by 144. So if we do the math for that, we should get 1.2 for board feet. So that's how much actual material we would be using. So if we were applying a cost to our material, for instance, a piece of wood cost, I don't know, $5 a board foot. For instance, some black walnut might cost $5 a board foot. So if I'm making my entire cutting board out of black walnut or something like that, and I were applying this cost per board foot for that material, I would say 1.24 board feet times $5 would equal my total cost. Okay, so that's going to be somewhere around $6.25. Just as an example. So once we have finished this, we can get our material. We can get some rough material, start to plan it out, where our cuts are going to be and where we're going to get each of these pieces from. So stay tuned for the next video.